Next up, we have Kenneth Walker III, the running back out of MSU, who, for me at least, was a rather interesting player to watch because, in terms of my grade and evaluation, you guys can probably see it on the screen, I was a tad lower on him than the consensus nationally seemed to be. I know I had him more in that third round range, closer almost to the fourth round than I did, say, the second or first round, which is where I've seen a lot of people thinking he should go. In terms of why, actually, I'll start with some positives first. Once the ball is in his hands, he can be electric, especially in the open field in particular. My first note about him was incredibly explosive, twitchy athlete, elite burst. And in that regard, I gave him a 19 out of 20 in terms of speed and excel, the highest grade in that category I've given any running back over the past 2 drafts. So very impressive. Can go from 0 to 100 in an instant, and did so certainly on a regular basis, almost to a fault, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But in terms of making guys miss in the open field and extending plays, how was he? I thought he was very solid. I thought he had a good balance of agility and change of direction ability, power, and contact balance as well. So what do I mean by that? I mean contact balance. He could absorb blows and remain upright, keep his base, and keep his legs pumping. Power, but he was able to lower his shoulder, and despite being a little bit of a smaller guy at 5'9", right around 210, he was more than willing to put his shoulder down and try and run through you, right? Didn't always work necessarily, but he was falling forward quite a bit, to his credit. And then lastly, of those 3, the agility and change of direction I thought was solid. I didn't think it was crazy, but it was adequate most certainly. And for a guy with his athletic profile, you wouldn't really expect any less. So I gave all those 3 grades, 7.25, 7, and a 7.5. I like them all, and I think the combination of them all almost makes the rest of them better, if that makes sense, because if you're bracing for impact and next thing you know, this guy busts out a quick little juke and messes with your angle, whether you're defensive back pursuing or whether you're somebody meeting him one-on-one in a hole, just that slight little distinction in terms of his angle and direction, that can throw you off. And if the opposite is true and you're light on your feet, you're expecting him to try and run around you in some capacity, and he puts a shoulder down, he's going to catch you off guard, and I think he did that quite a bit this past year at MSU. To me, the main issues, I would say there are 3. First and foremost, it's Kenneth's vision and patience. To me, that's the most important trait that a running back has, personally. And I grade it out of 20 points. It's the most heavily weighted on my grading criteria. And Kenneth, I mentioned he goes from 0 to 100 very quickly, almost to a fault, I would say. Maybe it was just that MSU offensive line was not very good, but even in the event if they weren't, what I'd like to see is more what I saw out of, say, Breece Hall, who was my running back 1, where, if B-gap is open and the play is supposed to go there, he is bursting through it as quickly as possible. If B-gap is clogged and there's nothing in A and there's nothing in C, he is tempoing down and, I don't want to say walking to the line of scrimmage, but he is slowed up to the point that you can let things develop and you can let blocks prolong and make plays off of that initial look that has now broken down by the time you get to the line of scrimmage, but in that first little instance was probably clogged. In that regard, it felt like Kenneth was oftentimes just bouncing off the backs of his offensive linemen and not going anywhere at all. I gave him, as I said, a 13.5. Otherwise, I have 2 serious questions about his third down utility. And these are really, in large part, what's weighing down his grade. Like I said earlier, I think he's one of the best pure runners in the class. You could even talk me into saying he's the second best. But in terms of his pass catching ability and his pass protection ability, I just don't know what he does. And the modern NFL, it's very important what you're able to do on passing downs in some way, shape, or form. And I didn't see Kenneth contributing at MSU in either facet, as the pass catcher was non-existent, essentially. Didn't catch any balls there. I was curious to see what he was able to do at the combine. Came out, ran a couple drills, and then stopped midway through. I don't know why he stopped. Maybe he didn't feel confident that he could catch a wheel route downfield. But if that's the case, I think that's certainly reflective of what I saw. He has the physical traits to make money after the catch. He could be a really dangerous guy. It just has to be used in that fashion. But it didn't happen for some reason or another. In terms of pass pro, he's small, as I said, and I don't want to say he's not willing to block guys and get in their way, but it was just ineffective. It was a lot of more shoulder strikes and things of that nature, more body bumping than anything else, and there really wasn't a whole lot of substance there. And at his size and at his strength, profile. I don't really think that there's a whole lot to work with there. Maybe he'll put on some weight at the next level. He might need to, in all honesty. Not that I think he's necessarily fragile, but with his sort of smaller frame, if you're looking at Kenneth as like a lead every down back that you're going to give 20 carries to a game, I might be a little bit concerned. But I think what I would want to do is try and minimize his usage between the tackles where that vision really matters. Get him out on the edge instead, and maybe if I was a team that had, say, a powerful back or a bigger back, more of a goal line back, someone who's comfortable inside, I would want to pair those two together and then have a nice little complementary unit there in terms of one guy who can bang it inside and is not gonna hit the backs of our offensive linemen every third play, and then the other guy who can be an absolute speed bug on the outside and break off these 80-yard gains is the home run hitter that Kenneth has the potential to be. So in that regard, it's not that I think he's bad or anything. I just think that, there's three main areas that are weighing his grade down, and in that regard, I don't know what there really is to say past that. I think that, to his credit, those are all sort of things that you can learn and work on, right? So I wouldn't even necessarily say that my third round grade is a negative. The fact that his grade is so high based primarily off the athletic traits, you could argue is a positive, because then there's a higher ceiling and room for growth. I think you can teach somebody to be a better receiving back. I think you could teach them to a degree how to be a pass blocker, and you could work on refining their vision, or you could specifically run plays that they're good at. Maybe that was something that MSU just struggled to do, because he did just transfer into MSU this past year after playing 2 years prior at Wake Forest. So possibilities are there. I like him as a player. I expect him to go early in day 2, but with that regard, we'll have to wait and see. If you guys want to see more of my content, though, make sure you subscribe so that way you're always in the loop of future videos. Leave a like, comment, do all that stuff. Hit the post notification bell, all those great things to support the channel, because for this one, I'm mic'd up, now I'm mic'ing out. Peace, guys. I'll see you next time.